Thank you for coming out. Great turnout. This is our second lecture series. And basically, you know, why we're here is, as CBD-DOCS, is to bridge the gap between the patient and the doctor. Okay? At CBD-DOCS, we have certified physicians who are certified by the FMA to write recommendation for cannabis in the state of Florida. So that's our goal, is to make sure we could hook up a patient with a certified physician who is knowledgeable in the cannabis area. Just to go back, going to the law of CBD in the state of Florida, 2014 in June, Governor Rick Scott passed into law the Low THC Compassionate Care Act in the state of Florida, which means the state of Florida is going to grow their own CBD in the state. And you have to have a few conditions, 3 conditions, in order to qualify to be put on the registry for the state of Florida. Those conditions are cancer, epilepsy, seizures, and spasticity, which is a little bit of a broad spectrum, could be as far as, you know, people who tend to individually. So he did that in 2014 of June. I currently work for an orthopedic surgeon doing orthopedics. One of the reasons why we got into the whole thing is because he's tired of writing prescriptions for Oxycontins, Vicodin, all this stuff that we know is okay for the pharmaceutical and medical industry, but we know it's hurting a lot of people, and so he wanted to get involved. We got involved, and we're here. We opened in August of 2015, and we're here today. So that's a brief overview of the law in the state. If you guys have any questions about the law of the state, we'll have question and answer after the lecture. But right now, I'm going to introduce Dr. Uphues.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Appreciate it. My name is Dr. Michael Uphues. I'm a family physician from Chicago originally. Been on the Fort Peck Indian Reservation in Montana for the last 20 years, kind of like the Park Avenue of Montana. And became interested in cannabinoid medicine about 10 years, well, it was greater than 10 years ago. Been involved in it for 10 years, been interested in it greater than 20 years. I had a patient back in the late 90s in Montana who had cancer and was undergoing chemotherapy and would use cannabis to allay some of the effects, mostly the nausea that this person gets from chemotherapy. He was pulled over one day in his car and then was prosecuted for possession of cannabis while he was basically self-medicating, treating his own illness. So I just said that if this ever comes to pass, if this ever comes into law, I'm going to be on board with this, start to study it more and see what I can find out about it. Because of course in medical school all we learn is in Schedule I, it's illegal, there's no medical use to it, it's highly addictive, and we move on to the next topic of heroin, or mushrooms, or LSD, which is all in the same class, which as we all know at this point is crazy. I think that's probably why everybody's students, I think we're all pretty much understanding that. We've been sold a bill of goods. Most of this was back in 1937, as you probably recall, the Reefer Madness campaign, right, which was a hugely successful propaganda campaign in this country. So much so that 70, 80 years later, we're still all nodding yes and remember it well. It was launched by a man by the name of Harry Anslinger. He was the chief of the Bureau of Narcotics, which is now the DEA. So this is the man that stood in front of Congress to get the Marijuana Tax Act passed in '37, and said the following. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S. Most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. So this is in front of U.S. Congress in 1937, and they bought this. You know, so it was made Schedule I, and it's been outlawed really ever since. Interestingly enough, up until 1937, actually into 41, cannabis was in over-the-counter preparations in this country, and a lot were used for pain relief. It was used for nausea and other things. But as early as the 1850s, it was actually suggested that it be used for epileptics by Dr. O'Shaughnessy, who kind of brought cannabis into modern medicine in this country. Interesting. So what I'm going to do is give you kind of an overview of the plant itself. First, some of the components of the plant, the cannabinoids, and most important, the 2 terpenes. Get into a little bit more of the history of it, and then I will talk about the 3 uses here in Florida. I think that's relevant here. Uses for CBD here in Florida. So that's going to be cancer, epilepsy, and spasticity. But as we know, there's so much more that can be treated, as we'll see in the presentation. So the plant is in the family Cannabaceae. It's in the genus Cannabis. There's over 100 phytocannabinoids in the plant. 50 plus terpenes. So terpenes are the substances in the plant that give it its characteristic odor, taste, and color in a lot of cases. So this would be like in rosemary and pine, alpha pinene. Everybody would know that one. That's a terpene. So terpenes are important in a plant because, especially as they work in the human body, they allow the cannabinoids to cross the tissues more effectively and then exert their physiologic effect. So that's why the terpenes are super important. And that's why when pharmaceutical companies come out and just want to pull out the THC and here give the people THC or give them CBD, it's not enough. You need a whole plant extract. And we'll see why. So this is exactly what the next statement talks about here. The herbal medicine is a whole plant or a partial plant extract. This was largely replaced by pharmaceuticals after 1950 and then pushed by drug companies and pushed off to the side by drug companies. Drug versus an herbal matrix, as you can see, a pharmaceutical has one ingredient with a carrier base to it. So this would be like using dronabinol, which is marinol THC, in a carrier base for nausea. It's also used for AIDS wasting syndrome in this country. And interestingly enough, the dronabinol or marinol, which is synthetic THC, is a Schedule 3 in this country. Cannabis, the whole plant, is Schedule 1. I'll explain that. They jump a whole class. It makes absolutely no sense.
Can you repeat what you said about the AIDS? What was it?
Yeah, AIDS wasting syndrome. So it boosts appetite. So it boosts people's appetite. So pretty important to know. I mean, you've got the whole plant that's a Schedule 1. They pull the THC. A drug company pulls out the THC, sells it to the patients, and it's a Schedule 3. That's in the same drug class as Valium, Flexeril, Mucinex, and things like that. Kind of odd and hypocritical and ironic. Thank God. And so, passionate about this. So 80% of the world population still uses herbal preparation. That's something that should be noted. So the 2 major types of cannabis that you're going to hear about, one is cannabis sativa and the other is cannabis indica. There's a lot of misconception out there about how marijuana acts and what it does. A lot of people think, well, one type equals another. Nothing could be further from the truth. So if you have a strain of cannabis that is more of a sativa plant, you can expect these types of effects from it. It reduces nausea, stimulates the appetite, causes kind of an uplifting mood, or it fights depression, which is also true of indica when it has low myrcene contents as opposed to high myrcene. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Energizes and stimulates, promotes creativity, relieves headaches, such as migraines, relaxes muscles, and relieves pain. It acts as an expectorant, and it's also used in many chronic diseases. Cannabis indica. This is the form people equate more with feeling tired, sleepy, or somnolent. It's a good muscle relaxant, relieves spasms and seizures, reduces inflammation, it's an anti-inflammatory, induces sleep, reduces anxiety and stress, nausea, that means again. That's what I was talking about a little bit earlier. So a lot of people think that every type of cannabis, or at least the indica strains, will automatically, boom, cause you to want to sleep or somnolence. The reason that's not true is, again, it's dependent on the terpene myrcene being in the plant. So the age-old plants, one going back thousands of years, the strains of indica, usually had less than 0.5% myrcene in them. And so they weren't really known for their somnolence back then. They were more uplifting and energetic, as are the sativa strains that are known now. If you have myrcene contents greater than 0.5%, so if you get up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%, these are the strains that tend to really make people sleepy. And it takes very little of that medicine to get people to sleep at night. Again, it reduces intraocular pressure, so there's some utility in treating people with glaucoma, which we do in Montana. That's one of the indications in Montana. And interestingly enough, it's a bronchodilator and expectorant. So a lot of people would think, well, if you smoke cannabis, it can cause lung problems, lung cancer. First of all, there's never been one case of lung cancer associated with cannabis use. Secondly, when you use it in a vaporized form, it relaxes the smooth bronchial muscles and actually opens up the bronchial tubes. So something that's little known by most people. It's 100 different compounds in the cannabis plant. Cannabinoids are a subset of terpenoids. The mother compound from which all the other cannabinoids are derived is called cannabigerolic acid, CBG. And there are some synthase enzymes, some proteins in the plant that then will break the CBG down into THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, CBC, cannabichromine, and then we're all here for cannabidiol, CBD. The A stands for acid. So in the plant, they're in acid form. So if you ate marijuana, as opposed to what they did, what they lead you to believe in Cheech and Chong, you would not get high from this. The reason you won't is because in order to have its physiologic effect and become active, you need to heat it. So most people don't know that. But there's a lot of utility also to juicing the plant. A lot of people will. So we use that especially for its antioxidant effects. You can actually juice the leaves, juice the buds, and so forth, and get great antioxidant physiologic effects from that. I want to talk about the terpenoids because this is a very important part of the plant. They contribute to the scents, flavors, colors, as found in cinnamon and sugar, or cinnamon and ginger, excuse me. Some terpenoids are valued for their medicinal properties. So some of these are menthol, camphor, and eucalyptus, of course, as well. Common terpenes, what I talked about earlier was alpha-pinene. This particular terpene enhances the transport across the blood-brain barrier of both the THC and CBD, so it can exert its physiologic effect. The beta-caryophyllene upregulates CBD at the CB2 receptors, that's in the immune system. Limonene, so everybody would recognize this is what's found in citrus fruits because it's its characteristic scent. It's an anti-anxiety, antidepressant. Linalool, this is found in lavender, and then beta-myrcene, as we talked about, greater amounts in the plant causes somnolence and onset of sleep. A little bit more of a history behind it. There's a lot of it. A bit of a sticky situation. So it's been used in Chinese medicine for over 5,000 years. So when legislators and media and so forth try to talk about this being some kind of new therapy, this is not so, not at all. Been used in Ayurvedic medicine over 2,000 years. We jump ahead to more modern times. 1854, cannabis was actually placed in the American Pharmacopoeia, and it was available in over-the-counter preparations until 1941. There was this lag time between 37 and 41 because when the Marijuana Tax Act actually took effect, it took a while for the taxes to actually be levied on the products, and it basically became prohibitive to sell them, and that's why. Going back to that as well, the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act had more to do with the hemp industry than it actually did the medicinal cannabis industry. A lot of people are not aware of this, so we'll make it aware. What went on back then was Randolph Hearst and DuPont had huge interest, of course, in newspapers, since Hearst owned the paper. He had huge interest in the lumber business because you made paper from it. And DuPont, of course, had huge interest for making nylon. So these guys wanted nothing to do with hemp. So they think that a lot of the backing came from DuPont, people like DuPont and Hearst, to do away with hemp. But then, of course, in the crosshairs came medicinal cannabis, since it was a cousin of hemp. So that's how it got caught in the crosshairs. Then Harry Anslinger jumped on the bandwagon with the racist comments, of course. He was a horrible racist. And he had all of his statements, of course, were not based in fact. It was all based on emotional responses that he thought he could get from the American public, and he was successful, immensely successful. 1890s, sailors brought cannabis into the port of New Orleans, and this was picked up by the New Orleans musicians. So this is where that comment actually comes from. You had the black jazz musicians and so forth in New Orleans, and some of them were using it recreationally. So this is this reference to black people using this. The Mexican Revolution was in 1910. It was brought into the U.S. for recreational use at that time. This is where the term, we think, where the term marijuana comes from. Marijuana was started to be used around that time. Up until then, it was really known as cannabis, either cannabis indica or cannabis sativa. 1964, Dr. Meshulam, who I saw speak last year here in Florida, he's still doing it, guys, he's still at it. He isolated THC and identified the chemical structure of it at Hebrew University in Tel Aviv. Interesting guy. 1972, the gentleman with the tape recorders, Tricky Dick Nixon, appointed the Schaefer Commission to investigate whether or not there was medical use for cannabis. They found that there was, and they rejected it. It just went away. Kind of like the alternative doctors statement. They're just kind of going away. But I'm bulletproof, so I don't, doesn't bother me. 1985, dronabinol was approved, so this is the synthetic THC that I talked about. It's now Schedule 3 as opposed to Schedule 1. 1986, you had Reagan come out in the war on drugs and his mandatory minimum jail sentences for possession of cannabis and other drugs, of course. Obama has recently released many of these people. There were 91 releases recently. 1988, DEA Judge Francis Young found that cannabis had clear medicinal use, and he recommended that it be investigated. Recommendation was ignored. The AMA on 2 different occasions recommended that it be put back in the pharmacopoeia and investigated. It was ignored, and no explanation given. 1996, California was the first state to legalize cannabis medicinally, and then Arizona jumped on the bandwagon the same year. Now we've got, I think, 24 states, right, with the addition of with Pennsylvania, so almost half. Interestingly enough, a couple months ago, Montana took 10 steps backwards. So we've had the law in effect for the last 12 years, and there was a group of right-wing senators who wrote a bill because they didn't like the number of patients in the state. And so now, the physicians are going to be restricted to 25 patients a year that we can recommend. And providers of cannabis are only going to be able to care for 3 patients. And some of these providers have 500, 600, 700 patients. So it's really not workable. That's supposedly going into effect on August 31st. Of course, we're going to vote on it again in November. We have a 2.5-month lag time, so it's a political maneuver. We're not exactly sure what they're trying to accomplish while the rest of the nation and the world goes forward on this issue. 1997 to 2000, federal government ignores the recommendation. Once again. Interestingly enough, October 7, 2003, the United States Department of Health and Human Services is granted the only patent to date on cannabis. Anybody know about this one? Oh yeah. Google this one. So they are the only ones that have a patent on it. There was some research that was done, and it was found to have antioxidant properties, as well as serve as a neuroprotectant. So this was for ailments such as Alzheimer's disease, Huntington's chorea, Parkinson's disease, and Lou Gehrig's. So they jumped on that bandwagon back in '03 and have had the patent ever since. Yet it still remains illegal in Schedule 1. I'm going to get into a couple of the major types now of the cannabinoids and what they do, how they act. First, we'll do just THC, CBD. Those are the most common. Everybody knows THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. The great antispasmodic, anti-proliferative, which means it's a cancer fighter. And the way this is thought to fight cancer is, one, it stops angiogenesis, which is the blood supply to the cancer cells themselves. And it also attaches to the cancer cells and causes cell death, which is called apoptosis. So basically, these cancer cells just basically blow themselves up, and they spare normal cells of the body. Great anti-inflammatory, neurostabilizer, so it will prevent and eradicate seizures. It's an anti-insomnia, of course, at high levels of myrcene in the plant, and then it's also an appetite stimulant, the so-called munchies. These, of course, are at low doses, because at very high doses, some of you may have experienced in the past with your own use, it'll actually cause nausea. So high doses, especially of an edible preparation that has high amounts of THC, will actually cause nausea, vomiting. It's not a pleasant experience at all. This is why the pharmaceutical companies don't like this so well. So CBD, and this is why we're here today, these are some of the effects that you can expect from CBD. So anxiolytic, decreases anxiety, antipsychotic, you can treat mental illness with this, of course. You can treat seizure disorders, anti-epileptic, neuroprotective. So again, you can use this for neurodegenerative disorders, not just for epilepsy. Vasorelaxant. So something we see in our patients very commonly in Montana is they'll have a drop in their blood pressure, and frequently we'll have to adjust their blood pressure medications. It's also an anti-diabetic, so they'll become under better glycemic control as well. We had a case last week in Montana where I had a cancer patient who I placed on cannabis oil. There's CBD oil available here. But you are to usually start with very, very small amounts of this oil because it's so concentrated. And then over time, you'll take about 1 gram of it a day for its therapeutic effect, especially in cancer. Well, this gentleman took a whole gram, his first dose. He wound up in the emergency room. When he told the physicians, he thought that the drop in blood pressure was from this. They didn't believe it. So, and online searches didn't yield much for him, and they had the ER call me, and I confirmed it. But he had to be put on vasopressors to get his pressure back up. It was so low. I think it was 80 over 40. So he got lower than expected. Because of its anti-ischemic properties, there's been some studies using it in people that have had heart attacks right after the post-MI period. Again, we've talked about the anti-proliferative effects, apoptosis, bursting of the cancer cells. Anti-emetic, which means it will stop people from vomiting, nausea. Antibacterial, anti-diabetic, people's blood sugars will start to come under better control when they're on it chronically. Anti-psoriatic, so this is for people with psoriasis. Not only the systemic effects of it and joint effects, but also topically. So we apply cannabis topically to some of these rashes and so forth, and they subside. It's a good analgesic, a bone stimulant, which means actually it stimulates bone growth and bone density. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it's also, which I had to tell the guys in the ER, it is the counter agent for THC toxicity. So it's the antidote for THC. It's in this same plant, and they balance each other out. So too much THC, you get CBD, you can either vaporize it, you can use it in a tincture form, you can use it in an edible form. And what it does is it knocks the THC off these receptor sites in the brain, takes over, and then the unpleasant effects go away. So all the paranoia, anxiety, a lot of the heart racing and stuff, that all subsides after you give CBD. These are strains that you'll hear about that are very high in CBD. Everybody's heard about Charlotte's Web. It's got a lot of press over the last couple of years. Charlotte Fiji was a little girl in Colorado who had a seizure disorder to vets, and she was having about 300 seizures a week. Once they started giving the CBD oil, she got down to about 4 seizures a week, so it was a remarkable effect. Press jumped all over it, and then of course you had the politicians in various states passing the CBD laws for children with epilepsy. Well, you want to tug on everybody's heartstrings. It's very nice of them. The hell with the adults who have epilepsy, but as long as the kids are then we're on solid ground. The other ones you'll hear about is Harlequin strains. So they have a CBD-THC ratio of 5:2 and AC/DC 20:1. Some of the names will be odd to people, but I see the names now no different than pharmaceuticals that I prescribed for 20 years. So we'll get to the 3 conditions now we're treating here in Florida with the CBD. So cannabis and cancer. First of all, acts as an anti-nausea for people that have had chemotherapy. It stimulates their appetite when they've had wasting and lost weight. And it treats neuropathy. Some of these chemotherapeutic agents start to cause nerve type or neuropathic pain, especially in the arms and legs and feet and hands. And it's a great treatment for neuropathic pain. In 1975, going back many years, the NIH found that THC CBD inhibited lung cancer cell growth in vitro, which is obviously in a test tube, and in mice. It's an antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-tumor by causing apoptosis or cell death. There's a doctor in Madrid, Spain, who's doing a ton of work in this area. His name is Manuel Guzman, and he has done a lot of work on brain cancer, astrocytomas, gliomas. They have found the same thing. They've actually done intralesional injections, so they inject the oil right into the cancer tumors themselves, and again, we get bursting of the cancer cells, and in some cases, complete resolution. So once again, something the pharmaceutical companies want nothing to do with, because this would take a lot of money out of their coffers. It's interesting because when you talk to people about this, they say, "Well, wouldn't these companies, don't they want the people to get better?" Well, no. I mean, if people are well, if they don't have cancer, how do you make money selling chemotherapy? I mean, you don't. So it's sick, but kind of a harsh reality. There's cannabis and neurodegenerative disorders. The DPHHS received the patent in 2003 based on research by Dr. Hampson. So he was doing the groundbreaking research on some of the neurodegenerative disorders, mostly Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, Lou Gehrig's, and MS. They found across the board they decreased spasms. In 2007, GW Pharmaceuticals, it's based out of the UK. Some of you folks may have heard of this product called Sativex or Sativex. It's marketed now in 24 countries, except the US. The US does not market it. It's a whole plant extract. It's originally used in MS patients. Of course, off-label usage was using it all day long in people with any kind of spastic disorder. But originally it was for people with MS. And then cannabis and epilepsy. Got this question on a radio program I did in Montana. So there was a gentleman who called up, was on phenobarbital, and to this day I'm still not sure quite what his question was. He was on so much phenobarbital, he was incomprehensible. So it was his contention that it didn't work, there was no research. But I had this ready at my fingertips. 1947 was actually the first study that was done in America. It was done in America, and it was on in a hospital with seizure disorders. And I think 7 people were enrolled in this, and they were given tincture of cannabis, either eliminated or decreased the seizure significantly in all of them. Research found there. The only other one that we know of to date was in Brazil, and that was back in 1981. Decreased again or eliminated seizures. And going back as far as 1841, this is when Dr. O'Shaughnessy had introduced cannabis into modern medicine and said it should be used as a treatment for epilepsy. So there's a quick and dirty on cannabinoid medicine. I'll open it up for questions right now.
Why didn't they do the kids and the adults both for the shuttered web?
Why didn't they what?
Include adults with the shuttered web?
That's a good question. We don't know.
Okay.
We don't know. Again, I think it's political. Yeah, there's no reason. There's no reason on earth, because in Montana it doesn't specify. When we give a recommendation, it just says epilepsy. It doesn't matter if it's a pediatric patient or an adult patient. We give it. So there's no reason on earth why we shouldn't be. It's just it's good politics.
I think it's kind of irrelevant to the CBD, but you mentioned the toxicity to the THC, that it would knock it out. That kind of threw me for a loop. I don't think of THC as having any toxicity,
Or toxicity?
You know what, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a relative term. And by the way, that's something that I should just mention offhandedly. There's never been a documented death from cannabis overdose in the history of man. So that's another thing. And when we bring this up to the politicians and the media time and time again, for some reason, it's like we're not heard. You got more people dying of aspirin every year, literally dying of aspirin overdoses, or Tylenol overdoses, and certainly opiate overdoses, as we all know, thousands every year. Not one in the history of man for cannabis. They can't explain this. They can't explain their actions.
Can it help with anaphylactic?
Anaphylactic, to my knowledge, it's never been studied for anaphylaxis. You mean to treat anaphylaxis? I don't know. Anaphylaxis still the treatment of choice, as everybody knows, is epinephrine.
Right.
Yeah, epinephrine, crystalloid fluids, and then we would of course give either corticosteroids and antihistamines for full-blown anaphylaxis. So and that'd be something you certainly don't want to try to find out by giving somebody cannabis and they're dying.
I do understand.
Yeah.
I have a comment. I noticed you mentioned about, helping stabilize diabetes over time, and also the chemo neuropathy. What about diabetic neuropathy?
We use it all the time.
And fibromyalgia.
Absolutely, we use it all the time. And in those patients, I typically recommend a few different forms. One, if they get a hold of cannabis oil, we recommend that because we want to absorb systemically. Two, is to use a high potent topical, especially on the legs and feet of our diabetic patients. It works great. It works really well. Absorbed topically. So a lot of people aren't aware that it's even available in that form. But that's one of the forms we utilize very frequently when we treat people.
What about in treatment with patients that have shingles, chronically even?
Yeah, neuropathic, again, it's for post-herpetic neuralgia. We treat this commonly. So even when the rash subsides and people have persistent pain, we'll give it the same way. We'll give it by oil form and then usually by topical. If they have breakthrough, we'll have them use a vaporizer, especially at night. If they're having trouble getting to sleep, 1 or 2 hits from a vaporizer and again, they're able to sleep.
So what does it do for cancer, the CBD part? Because I've read where it just can hold it off and, keep it at bay.
Right.
Keep it from metastasizing.
Right. This is
THC is the killer.
Right, is a killer. This is why, Guzman is doing all of his studies in Spain. So what we think is you need a certain we don't know the magic number though, percentage of THC as well as CBD. And the products we've got, it's for synergy. But in Florida, you've got less than usually 0.5%, THC.
Right.
Any of the states who have the high CBD laws, so you usually have about 10% CBD or better, and then less than 0.5% THC.
So what does the CBD do for the cancer? Anything?
Yeah, so we still think it causes.
We
still think it causes apoptosis.
You do?
Yeah.
Because I haven't read anything that.
Yeah, we do. From the studies.
Because they're like, without the THC, it may just keep it from metastasizing.
Yeah. No, that's from his recent studies in Spain. Yeah.
I understand the concept within the U.S. and how it's been political, it's been held back and that sort of thing. But what about Europe? What have the equivalents of our FDA in Europe done where this has become a standard daily usage for people with different issues, whether it be fibromyalgia, epilepsy, cancer, or whatever?
Well, we led the way to internationally making this illegal. So we kind of paved the way. But over there, obviously, they've been more sympathetic with more research. You got research going on, Spain, Italy, Great Britain, are the three major places. And then there is a lot going on in Israel, not Europe, of course, and then here. So they're more sympathetic to it, but again, the only preparation that's been approved right now by GW Pharmaceuticals is Sativex. So they have approved it.
Okay, one more question. Everything that I've read so far has basically said, you start out with a little amount, speaking mainly of the oils.
Right.
Most likely sublingually or something like that.
Right.
And that you basically see what your tolerance is to it, and you keep building upon that until you get to a threshold where it's all you can really be comfortable with, I guess, from the THC side of it. More
Right, up to a gram a day, right.
So that's the general treatment, and regardless, is use the oils ideally closer to 2-to-1, 3-to-1, or 4-to-1 of CBD versus THC if you can get it, and just keep doing it until you've reached your tolerance threshold and stay there.
What does help the tolerance though is if you've got some CBD on it. And so that's how we've started to get our patients titrated up more quickly.
So if you have like CBD, THC 1-to-1, that's pretty.
That'd be better. The other thing we do, even if you've got the 4-to-1 THC, if you keep a vape pen, a CBD vape pen, or some CBD tincture on hand, you can just squirt right under your tongue, sublingually. If you start to get some of these effects we were talking about earlier, you just use some CBD, and it seems to stem the tide for you. Get you to develop the tolerance more quickly.
And what I've seen with the oil is it's almost like a tar.
It is.
And
Super tenacious, thick, sticky.
Yeah, and after you hold it in your mouth for a while, then come hell or high water, you eventually got to swallow it.
Right. What we recommend a lot of our patients do, we just have them go to a CVS or a pharmacy and just get a little capsule, and you just squeeze it right in the capsule. Take it away.
Does it work as well?
Works great.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
as
It doesn't work as quick, but it works just as well.
Give it up that easy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how easy that is to get around that one. Just squeeze it into a capsule. Some people will do it, squeeze it into a little bit of applesauce.
Yeah, it's just the first time I saw it. It was
Yeah.
really
We
odd
actually
to
have
see it.
Because it really is
few of the
sticky.
patients
tenacious.
with epilepsy,
Yeah.
that's how they're doing it, they're putting it in a capsule.
Yeah, 'cause we're here kind of in this.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Oh, I've got bad fibromyalgia.
It's just that
I've got liver
it's it's lipophilic, so it's absorbed, quickly.
Well,
The
okay.
oil doesn't help them absorb.
Not necessarily, no.
What about suppositories? I saw
Use it all the
people
time.
doing that, too.
Use it all the time
And they
for us.
don't get the bad effects.
No, we're using it for people with inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, primarily, and people that are having severe nausea, so they can't tolerate any kind of oil, so we'll give it that way.
But
Yeah.
the amount of CBD that with the THC, you're saying to counteract maybe the psychoactive effects.
Right.
Is there too much of the CBD that can knock out the medical effects of the
No,
THC?
there's not.
There's not too
No.
much? So you could do a bottle
That's
of
the
the
beauty of it.
CBD and still do your THC?
You can.
You can.
That's the beauty of it.
So you can't over.
There's not many drugs, there's really no lethal
Yeah.
dose. I mean, they've tried. They've done like for instance, primate studies, small monkeys. So the starting dose of THC in most humans is about 10 milligrams. They gave these tiny, like 9,000 milligrams. They couldn't kill them. They tried. We're trying to kill you. 9,000. They couldn't do it. So I mean, 9,000 milligrams is a lot of THC. I mean, we'll never.
They don't have an idea where the sweet spot is as far as
No. Some of the dispensaries that are pretty good at that though are in California, where they've been around a lot longer. A little bit more anecdotal research, and anecdotal. A lot of, of course, the drug companies and people in mainstream medicine would say it means nothing, but we all know if you're the anecdotal case is cured of your cancer, you're pretty much on board with it.
The one thing that I've been hearing that makes me somewhat uneasy
Mhm.
is the fact that when you take the CBDs, it, like everything else, goes through and gets processed by your liver.
It does.
And it impacts the way your liver metabolizes everything else that hits your body.
It is. It's metabolized by the cytochrome P450. It is. So people that are on blood thinners and stuff like that, we're very careful with. You have to be careful when you're taking it orally like that. There is a first pass metabolism.
What about vaporizer?
No, that's perfectly fine.
What if it's an injection blood thinner? You know what I mean, like.
Still metabolized in the liver, if it's still metabolized by the liver, you still have to worry about it.
So it increases the effects of blood thinners?
It will increase it.
Or decreases?
It will increase it.
Oh, okay.
Less coumadin.
Wow.
You need less coumadin typically.
No, what if it's like enough box or whatever, Lovenox or, you know what I mean?
Right, you need less of it. is what I'm
Really?
saying, yeah.
It's different, it's like I'm on Xarelto, how it would affect Xarelto is different than how it would.
Right.
Totally.
Has there been any kind of research or study about how it affects people on dialysis?
No, not that I know of. If it has, I'm not aware of it.
Biggest thing I'm saying, how does the average Joe Snow go up and deal with his doctor, who he's been seeing for quite some time to help treat and wrestle with his ailments?
Right.
And the doctor goes, holistic,
And they do.
step away.
You're absolutely right.
And that happens all the
And
time.
they do.
What is the best, most effective way of dealing with that? Because truth of the matter is, if you've got something that's really critical, you know, you don't want to do without.
No, you're right.
So what do you do then?
No, it's no joke. You've taken like a first step today. I don't know if that's you, but you've taken a first step today. A lot of people are starting to seek people like me out. So we do, you know, I'm board certified in family medicine, traditional family medicine, just like any other family medical doctor. But I became certified in cannabinoid medicine because of a passion for it. But I also do functional medicine. So I do, you know, we focus a lot on diet, on exercise, bioidentical hormone replacement, herbal supplements, and herbal preparations for, you know, common diseases, so to speak. So what I would do is seek out the counsel of like a functional medicine specialist, because those are people that are going to probably be more on board with you. You know, people come to us and we see a list of like 20 pharmaceuticals. We're the types of docs say, we're going to get rid of this, this, this. We try to, you know, whittle away all 20 if we can, and get you on a more natural preparation.
Right.
So that's what you do, because when you're dealing with the typical medical community out there, which is most of the medical community, they're ignorant about it, for one, and two, they're petrified of it. They truly are. Because they're worried about an audit, or they're worried about getting sued, or they're worried about the DEA.
But there is some validity to there not being but a very limited amount of research that's been done so far.
Yeah, except that, you know, if you go on PubMed online, 22,000 articles. It's just a fact. So they keep going back to there's not enough research. 22,000 studies. Drug companies get drugs passed on one study. So I think there's a ton of information. It's just something they don't want to deal with, you know. But the docs, physicians by their very nature are like, they're afraid people. They truly are, because you're like, it's like from the time you hit medical school, you're like pummeled, you know. And it's always cover your ass, worry about getting sued, worry about oversight, worry about the government. After a while, you either take a stand or you don't.
And a lot of it's wine and dine by the pharmaceutical industry too. So, you know.
I can tell you a lot of pushback with doctors lately, even though there's been, DEA's been going after legal narcotic.
Right, they sure have.
Bad, and I mean, like, a while back, I don't know if you people know, they arrested about 70 doctors in the state of Florida at one time, the
Right.
same day.
Yeah, for the
They went
pill.
into their offices, put them in their cuffs, pulled them out of their offices
Yeah, the pill.
for just writing too many scripts for Percocet or Vicodin.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, you probably remember. So
They
the urgent
even-
care centers were setting up pain clinics, basically.
Yeah, it was an epidemic out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, but some of these doctors that they arrested got released later on because when they did a medical review of their documentation.
Plus, you want to talk about the crime rate.
Oh, yeah.
These places that were getting broken into. You know,
Yeah,
just to
that's
get
even
the
separate issue.
answers.
But they closed down
What do you do with
distribution centers.
100,000 blues on it?
Because I know I'm on painkillers, and my pharmacist had trouble getting from the supplier because several suppliers got shut down.
Yeah, this was a nice medicine though to bridge the gap, because a lot of comes out now. Well, if the DEA is coming down on all prescription pain pills, and then you're left to Tylenol or Motrin or another NSAID, what do? Well,
That's
it's a nice segue, but again, most physicians, you know, can't or won't prescribe it, or they're petrified of it. You know, what happens in Montana, the reason that this 25 patient rule got put into effect is I talked to the senator last year who drafted this bill. I said, where did you get 25 patients? And he said, well, given the number of cards right now, that are out in the state, cannabis cards. If we took the total number of doctors that can write for the cards, that number would be about 25 apiece. I said, well, with all due respect, Senator, you know damn well that in all the major hospitals, Billings Clinic, or St. Patrick's, St. Vincent, St. James, all the hospitals across the state, they write a clause into their contracts, you cannot prescribe, you cannot even talk about medical cannabis. The VA system, the Indian Health Service, the public health system, those are federal agencies. Those doctors can't write for cannabis. So who does that leave? With all due respect, Senator, I hear you, but you know what? You're full of shit. I mean, there leaves about 5 of us out there who are willing to step forward, and we're going to have thousands of patients, and the guy down the block who's going to prescribe for 1 cancer patient will have 1. So, you know, you either take the stand or you don't. But a lot of the docs, you know, just remain ignorant on it, and they remain scared. They won't educate themselves.
I'm basically half Chinese, half German. I've always done the acupuncture. My sister actually is going the acupuncture class in Fort Lauderdale, right? And it's the same thing. I knew a doctor in Mass General in Boston. He's like, no one really believe acupuncture yet. You know, they won't license it. They're just starting it so they can insurance cover it. And it's the same sort of paranoia of it. And my father was in China one time, Asia. They're doing removing a tumor. She's wide awake. You're not signing on the thing saying you'll never wake up from anesthesia, right? While she's talking, they were cutting, making sure they wouldn't damage the vocal cords, some goiter or something like that. And it was, you know, and so I think it's the case studies that's the hard. People like, you know, everything like they want to see that scientific proof, and they're holding back heavy studies. You know, between that one Michigan, you can only get it from Michigan in one place since 1968. So you have to go like this to do any hoops to do studies, right? You know, so I mean that's the. But the proof is there. I mean,
it's there. You know. Again, that online search, if you check it, over 20,000, and about 10,000 of those have been done in the last 10 years. We got a ton of research out there. You know, so they keep using that as kind of a default. You know? Well, there's not enough research. Sorry. There is. There just is. Sorry.
What's a really good way to share that research so you can make it known for other people? Because I have a lot of people on there that are sick.
Facebook would be huge. And here's the other thing. If people, you were asking about these doctors, one thing you can tell your physician is, I have a great course for you to take. I took it, I took it online, it's great. It's a 12-hour course, it's offered by the Medical Cannabis Institute. It starts out with the history of it, history of cannabis, gets into the biochemistry, physiology of it, and all the conditions that's used to treat it, and the research behind it. It's a great course. So the information is out there. Medical Cannabis Institute is based out of California, and they put on a great online course. All MDs.
It's on their website?
Pardon me?
It's on their website?
Yeah, it's really the crux of the website is education. Yeah.
All right, folks, we want to be timely on the lecture, so maybe one more question for Dr. Upstairs.
How do we find more of you guys around here? Like you.
That's exactly what
I was going to say if you fire your doctor. No, I'm just
I didn't want to.
Yeah, what is our next step? Do we see you for?
Okay, thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Any questions? Feel free to ask me, okay?
Thanks. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your passion in it.
Thank you. Dr. Upstairs is seeing patients today, so I don't know if anybody is interested in seeing Dr. Upstairs today. That's a possibility. Just see me after this lecture. I want to bring up Alan real quick. Alan is with United for Care. He's a big proponent of going out there hustling and make sure all the petitions are signed and making sure Amendment 2 is passed. Amendment Yes on 2 is passed in November. So we don't have to keep struggling with all this. So I'm going to bring Alan up real quick and he'll go over some of this and he has some paperwork here.
So we're all aware, hi, my name is Alan Torres. I am helping United for Care and Regulate Florida. I helped United for Care put the petition on the ballot. I was out there getting signatures, doing the little things that we needed to get done so that it's on the ballot. Now, everybody needs to vote. We did our part, now you guys have to do yours. November comes around real soon. You guys spread the word, vote yes on Amendment 2. Now, I also have a petition here for Regulate Florida. This is to regulate cannabis like alcohol, similar to what Colorado is doing. And this would be benefit everybody. besides the medical hurdles we have to go over, this will let the layperson well conditions to use cannabis and be regulated similar to alcohol. And I have literature on the side, also the petitions, and there is a raffle that Regulate Florida is doing with Normal Florida. Normal's a cannabis organization that they've been promoting cannabis for the longest. And the raffle is $10 per ticket and ends on the 30th. So it's not much time left, but there's a website on here, and you can win a chance to win the car. It is a 1968 Mustang GT 390.
I want it.
There's also stickers for Regulate. Please, as I have epilepsy, and there's a lot of stigma behind cannabis use. You guys being here are moving forward and showing that you want the laws to change and be in favor of this. We need people like you. We need people like you to spread the word. And the more ears we have to hear this information, the better. So feel free, like I said, to sign the petition, pick up your information, and start spreading the word. Thank you very much.
And I want my 1968 Mustang.
Okay, guys.